It was meant to bring progress, faster travel, smoother commutes, and modern infrastructure. But for one community, that highway brought something else entirely: destruction. Families displaced, homes demolished, and generations of history wiped off the map in the name of urban renewal. In this video, we're uncovering the highway that raced a neighborhood, how government planning, racial segregation, and politics intersected to destroy entire communities across America. And trust me, the scars left behind are still visible today. Before we dive in, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the bell, because understanding how we got here is the first step to building a better future. The promise of urban renewal. After World War II, America was changing fast. Cities wanted to modernize, and the federal government was ready to pay for it. The Housing Act of 1949 gave cities billions of dollars for something called urban renewal. The idea sounded good on paper: clear out old, run-down neighborhoods and replace them with modern developments. Build highways to connect suburbs to downtown. Make cities work better for everyone. But there was a dark reality behind these promises. City planners had massive power to decide which neighborhoods were blighted and needed to be removed. And time after time, they chose black neighborhoods. Not because these areas were actually falling apart, but because black residents had the least political power to fight back. These were communities that banks had already redlined, refusing to give mortgages or business loans. Now the government was finishing what discrimination had started: the communities they destroyed. Before the highways came, these neighborhoods were alive. Take the Rondo neighborhood in St. Paul, Minnesota. It was the heart of black life in the city. Jazz clubs, churches, family-owned stores, and tight-knit blocks where everyone knew each other. Kids played in the streets, and on Sundays, the whole community came together. Rondo wasn't perfect, but it was home to thousands of families who had built their lives there despite racism and segregation. The same was true in dozens of cities across America. In Nashville, it was Jefferson Street, known as the Harlem of the South. In Miami, it was Overtown, where legends like Count Basie and Ella Fitzgerald performed. In Syracuse, it was the 15th Ward, a mixed but predominantly black neighborhood with a strong sense of community. These places had their own economies, their own culture, their own identity. They were proof that black Americans could thrive even in a system designed to hold them back. But to white city planners, these neighborhoods were just obstacles. They saw old buildings and called them slums. They ignored the businesses, the churches, the social networks that held everything together. They looked at maps and drew straight lines for highways, not caring what stood in the way. The highway projects that changed everything. The interstate highway system was one of the biggest construction projects in American history. Starting in 1956, the federal government poured money into building 41,000 miles of highways across the country. In cities, these highways were supposed to make commuting easier and help downtowns compete with growing suburbs. But the routes weren't chosen randomly. Engineers and planners deliberately targeted black neighborhoods. In their own documents, they called these areas the path of least resistance. What they meant was simple: black residents couldn't fight back as effectively as white neighborhoods. Property values were lower because of racist policies, so buying up land was cheaper. And white politicians didn't care about displacing black voters. Interstate 94 ripped through Rondo in St. Paul, destroying 700 homes and businesses. The highway split the neighborhood in two and displaced 1/6 of the city's entire black population. Interstate 40 did the same thing in Nashville, tearing through Jefferson Street and scattering the community. In Miami, Interstate 95 cut right through Overtown, devastating what had once been a thriving district. City after city, the pattern repeated. Highways became walls, separating black neighborhoods from opportunity and erasing their history. The human cost. The damage wasn't just about buildings, it was about lives. When a highway came through, families lost everything. Homeowners were forced to sell at prices far below market value. Renters were given short notice to leave. Small business owners who had spent decades building their shops saw them demolished in days. There was no real compensation, no help finding new places to live, no acknowledgement of what was being lost. People were scattered across cities, far from their jobs, their churches, their friends. The social fabric that held communities together was ripped apart. Kids had to change schools. Elderly residents lost the neighbors who checked on them. Churches lost their congregations. The wealth that Black families had managed to build despite discrimination was wiped out. The resistance begins, but not everyone accepted this quietly. By the late 1960s, people started fighting back. In cities across America, residents organized protests, filed lawsuits, and demanded to be heard. They weren't asking for much, just the right to stay in their homes and keep their communities intact. In New Orleans, residents of the French Quarter and Treme neighborhood fought against a proposed riverfront expressway. They argued that it would destroy historic areas and displace Black families. After years of protests and legal battles, they won. The highway was never built. In San Francisco, activists stopped the Embarcadero Freeway from being extended and later had part of it torn down. In Boston, community groups fought against the Interbelt Highway that would have destroyed several neighborhoods. Some neighborhoods fought back and won. The resistance movement proved that highways weren't inevitable. In Washington, D.C., activists stopped 3 proposed highways that would have torn through Black neighborhoods. In Baltimore, residents fought against a highway through Lincoln Park and won. In Portland, the Mount Hood Freeway was canceled after years of community opposition. These victories came too late for neighborhoods that had already been destroyed, but they saved others. They'd also changed how cities thought about highways. By the 1970s, the bulldozer approach to urban planning was losing support. The environmental movement, civil rights activism, and local organizing came together to demand better. Some cities even started trying to fix their mistakes. In Rochester, New York, officials filled in part of the Inner Loop Highway and turned it back into city streets. In Syracuse, there are ongoing discussions about removing Interstate 81, which divided the city and destroyed the 15th Ward. In St. Paul, the city has worked to rebuild connections in the Rondo neighborhood, though nothing can fully replace what was lost. Why this still matters today? The highways are still there. The scars they left on cities remain visible if you know where to look. Drive through any major American city, and you'll see how highways cut through certain neighborhoods, creating barriers between communities. You'll notice how one side of the highway is wealthier, wider, and has better services, while the other side struggles. The wealth that was destroyed never came back. Families who lost their homes and businesses couldn't pass that wealth down to their children and grandchildren. The gap between Black and white wealth in America can be traced directly back to policies like urban renewal and highway construction. Communities that were vibrant and self-sufficient were reduced to disconnected fragments. But understanding this history also shows us a path forward. The activists who fought highway projects in the 1960s and 70s proved that communities have power when they organize. Their victories remind us that cities don't have to be designed around cars and highways. They can be designed around people, around neighborhoods, around the communities that actually live there. What was once called progress came at a price: the loss of culture, connection, and community. The story of the highway that erased a neighborhood reminds us that development without humanity always leaves damage behind. What are your thoughts on how cities can rebuild trust and restore what was lost? Drop your ideas in the comments. I'd love to hear your take. If this story moved you, hit like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who cares about urban history and social justice. Until next time, stay aware, stay compassionate, and never stop questioning what progress truly means.